Welcome back to the Celtics Nation Rise podcast. I'm your host, Griffin Aldrich. Alongside me, I have my co hosts, Seamus Zarlingo and Andrew Quinn. And we have a very special guest here today for the fan series, episode 49, Ian Inangelo. Sorry, I think I butchered your last name right there. But you guys know him from the famous TikTok star, famous Celtics star. We got to get, you guys all know him. Well, welcome to the show. Actually, second time joining us. I forget what podcast it was, but it was way before we were with Celtics Talk Weekly. So, episode 49, presented by Celtics Talk Weekly. How are you doing today? And tell everyone at home about you. I'm sure they know all about you, though, but give a little introduction for us, please.
I'm doing good. I appreciate you guys having me back. I used to do a lot with Celtics Talk Weekly. I used to do a lot of post game shows and stuff like that, and had a really good time doing it. Had to step away for a little bit, but it's good to be back. Uh, Probably know me from making the Celtics TikToks and all that stuff. But I'm also a writer for Celtics blog as well, so covering the Celtics.
Well, that's incredible. Thank you again for watching the show. Yeah, when this gets posted on Celtics Talk Weekly, everyone's going to be like, oh, he's no stranger to us. But for Celtics Nation Rise, I'm sure still no stranger. But we'll start it off. I'll ask the first question, then we'll go Andrew, Seamus, and we'll go through. But what started the Celtics fandom for you? Where did you become a Celtics fan? Obviously, growing up in Massachusetts, but what made you fall in love with this Boston Celtics team?
Yeah, growing up in Massachusetts, obviously, I always knew about the Celtics. Obviously, 2008, I was like 8 years old, so I don't really remember a whole lot from that championship run. However, I did remember that they did win the championship that year, but it wasn't until like Isaiah Thomas uh, started carrying the Celtics around the 2017 season uh, where I really started getting into and following the Celtics more closely. After that, it just kind of took off from there. Started making videos around the 2020 bubble, and yeah, it pretty much brought me to where I am now. It's pretty crazy ride, but yeah, 2017 season when Isaiah Thomas was the MVP around there was probably where I really started following the Celtics closely.
It's incredible. Andrew.
Yeah, I think Isaiah Thomas is a great introduction to like that Celtics fandom, and he embodied the Celtics culture and everything that the Celtics stand for. So if you could kind of go into like what really drew you in with Isaiah Thomas, like what kind of what drew you in with Isaiah Thomas?
Yeah, I think it was just the fact that he was doing what he was doing at 5'9"
Hmm.
and basically carrying the Celtics like on his back. I mean, yeah, Horford was there. Avery Bradley was there, but like it was really Isaiah Thomas who was carrying the offense on his back in that playoff run where, his sister passed away. He lost a tooth in the Wizards series and he still be able to carry them to the Eastern Conference Finals before he got injured. But yeah, I mean, that was a special playoff run that basically cemented my love for Isaiah Thomas right there. And yeah, I'm never going to forget that.
Yeah, and we were talking about that on the last podcast, like guys like Marcus Smart and these guys that kind of maybe didn't necessarily win a championship for us, but kind of sustained that Celtics energy and that Celtics passion and kind of bridged the gap between players like Jason Tatum and Jalen Brown and really showed them the ropes before that. So we got to give a shout out to IT and everything he's done for the Celtics the community. And it just goes to show that there's so many more steps that go into it than just um, that final step when you're on top of the mountain.
Oh, for sure.
As Celtics fans, we're completely blessed. Think about how many great seasons we've seen over the past decade, especially during a lot of our come ups in media, especially you, Ian. It's like the bubble was already 5 years ago. I can't put into
It
my
was so
mind that it was
crazy.
5 years ago. It feels like it was
So
yesterday.
crazy.
But since then, Celtics have won a championship. They made multiple Eastern Conference Finals runs, and you even talk about the 2017 run with Isaiah Thomas. But through your time as a Celtic fan, right, Ian? Which, let's face it, it's been your entire life. What are
Basically, yeah.
some of the more enjoyable moments you can remember right off the bat? And what is the peak of your Celtics fandom so far? And I don't want to hear just the championship, right? Because everybody it's the
That's a cop out.
championship.
That's a
It's the
cop out for sure.
championship. I want to hear details about either the championship or other moments you really think back to over the last 10 years and go, wow, that was just one of the best times as a Celtic fan.
Definitely my first favorite moment that I can really think of is definitely that 2018 playoff run. No Kyrie, no Hayward, just Tatum, Brown, Rozier, Horford, all of them, weren't expected to do anything in that playoff run. They were expected to lose to the Bucks in the first round. They end up beating them. There was no way they were going to beat the 76ers with Rookie of the Year Ben Simmons. And they held them to 1 point in one of those games and
Game
basically just
two. Game two.
dominated them from there. Exactly. It was awesome. That was
The
peak.
Celtics came back from down 18 in game two. That one too. Legendary
Exactly.
moment. Legendary moment.
And obviously, they got Tatum dunking on LeBron in Game 7 of that Cavs series. And I really don't think people give the Celtics enough credit in that Cavs series. Like, granted, yes, it was LeBron, and they didn't really have a whole lot of depth, but it was LeBron at the peak of his power. And the fact that you have like a bunch of, young 20-something-year-olds who basically are running with a head coach in Brad Stevens, who's, he's a genius head coach, but at the same time, he probably gets the best out of any, roster that's kind of like underdog roster kind of thing. The fact that Brad Stevens was able to, kind of coach his way getting through that Celtics playoff run was probably a sign that we should have known that he was going to be with the Celtics for a long time, whether it be coaching or the front office kind of thing. Obviously, from there, it was the tough times through 2020 and 2019 was a tough season. The bubble run where they couldn't really get past the Heat in that Eastern Conference Finals. That Raptors series in the bubble, though, that was also a huge series, absolutely amazing series. Probably the peak, though, obviously you're going to think is the finals, which obviously they won. The peak, in my opinion, though, was when they made the finals in 2022. That was
that was such a good moment.
That was
a
the
lot
first. That was the first time I've seen the Celtics. They finally got over the hump with the core. Tatum and Brown and Smart in that 7-game series against the Heat. You had Al Horford falling to his knees after they finally made the championship for the first time. Obviously, we know how that series played out. But the peak of that was being in Boston, watching the Celtics make the finals for the first time since 2008, and just being there and embracing the moment was pretty awesome. And then obviously you got 2024, being there, being in Boston again, watching game 5 in the Garden, probably the best game the Celtics played that entire season, dominating the Mavericks and just it being a celebration in the streets. I mean, you can't beat that. You can't beat that.
No, it definitely incredible. But I want to ask you this question is we kind of talked about it on the last 2 fan series is kind of our routines. We're all very superstitious. We've came to say as a Celtics fan, but obviously we talked to the caveman and his routine is going up Causeway, right up the stairs, right up to the Garden. And we talked about Brandon Capello, him is maybe putting on a certain Celtics jersey or something. Do you have a pregame routine? Or what's your ideal day going to a game at the Garden?
I don't really know if I have a pregame routine. Definitely
fans too, like the meet and greets. How are those too? What do you do with that?
Yeah, I don't know if I have a pregame routine. I guess I know it's definitely driving into Riverside and taking the T in from there. If that counts as a thing, I guess. But I don't really know if I have a pregame ritual kind of thing, but during the games, it's definitely fun. Going down on the concourse, whether I'm sitting in the 300s or not, going down on the concourse level at halftime, just seeing everybody there, people who are been on the fan series, people that are going to be on the fan series, just regular fans of people that have seen my content before. Meeting everybody like that is definitely probably the best part about going to Celtics games for me. It's just the game can be what the game is, but seeing all the people that I know and meeting all the new people that know me is probably the most incredible part of that.
How
Well,
often are you recognized, Ian, at games? When you go to games, obviously, fake Jaylen Brown, he was on here and he was telling
Oh
all
yeah.
his stories, but I'm sure you have a couple as well outside the arena at TD.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, the first time I went to a game after I like first started getting popular on TikTok was the game 4 of that 2021 Nets series. That was the big three Nets with Kyrie, Harden, and KD. Obviously, they lost that game, but I mean, the first time I got there, it was the first game they opened TD Garden post COVID, like full capacity. So obviously, I had to be there. But yeah, I didn't even like. I drove into the city, didn't even make it like 5 feet to the garden without somebody yelling, "Yo, you're that guy from TikTok, right?" That was the first time I've experienced that, and that was pretty insane. There've just been so many different interactions. Like I've met people, like even if like I've been on vacation to like random places, people have seen me before and they've noticed me, which is pretty insane. Like I was in Vegas last year during the finals, at least during game 1 and 2 during the finals, and like I had somebody know who I was at just like a random hotel I was just at, and someone recognized me there, and it was ridiculous. It was insane. Um, but yeah, I absolutely love it. I love when people come up to me and just like are excited because I never think of it that way. I never think of myself as like a celebrity or anything. Like I just make random videos on the internet. But like I love when people come up to me and like are so excited to meet me. Like that's the best feeling.
Well, I have to say, I actually have my own story meeting you, Ian. And I think we talked about this last time, but I will say I've known your TikTok videos for forever. Like I've seen them since, like you said, the bubble. So it was actually funny. It was at Red Sox winter weekend. I don't know if you even remember this moment, but I remember I saw you like in one of the lines because obviously I was waiting to meet the players. Obviously, that's what they used to do at winter weekend. And I said to my brother, I was like, yo, that's Ian. That's the famous TikToker. And I was like, and I went up to you and I was like, yo, can I get a picture? So that was our actually. And then ever since then, I remember I saw you at a Maine Celtics game once.
I remember that.
Just,
Yeah,
yeah. And I gave you a
definitely
fist bump.
remember that.
And then I remember I also saw you at the Garden once too. You went by too. So I've seen you 3 times. And it was funny before we even had this podcast connection. But I remember I'm gonna try to pull up the picture. But that was just my own personal time meeting you because I was like, wow, you make those Celtics TikToks. And it was a lot of fun for sure. But obviously, I do want to ask this too. I know this is about the Boston Celtics, but we also do a lot of Maine Celtics content here as well. What's been like, how do you like it up at the expo? You know, Andrew and I obviously are going to be at a lot of games next year. And I went to, I think 16 out of like the 20 something home games last year. So what's so special about that little arena up in Portland? And then Andrew, go. I'm sorry. I had to ask this quick question considering our meeting at the
Oh yeah,
expo, obviously.
definitely. I mean, it's kind of interesting because when you first look at the expo from the outside, you think it's just like a high school gymnasium or like a community center or something like that. But you don't even like look at it as like this like random, basketball gym in the middle of Maine. But yeah, it's a rocking crowd there. And like from the first time I went, um, it was a while ago. It was like 2021, I think was the first time I went. The quality of like the game day interactions has improved dramatically from the first time I was there to now. Like the scoreboard is a lot, they got all the stuff going on the scoreboard. Like it feels like a legit kind of like Boston Celtics atmosphere there. And the fact that you can get that in such a tiny gymnasium is pretty amazing. If you haven't been there, you definitely have to go because it's a great time.
I will say, like, I think it was 2 years ago was my first time, so I didn't even know that. But here's that picture, by the way. Had to pull
Yes,
that up really quick. Yeah,
I
because I
remember
remember.
that.
Yeah, I asked you after. I was like, "Hey, what player is at a certain one?" Because I was rushing back and forth because I bought a bunch of them. Speaking of that, though, the Red Sox did sweep the Yankees, and it's funny we're talking about this because last fan series we had Brandon Capello on here, and Roman Anthony had his first hit, and I was happy about it, so I put it on the screen. and it turns out he was a Yankees fan. But we got to talk about that. I actually found out, Ian, that you work for the Woo Sox too, and I work for the Sea Dogs, so we have that connection.
That is pretty funny
too. But Andrew, go along.
Yeah, I agree. The Expo, it's this small arena, but once you get in there, it feels like they kind of tried to like transport the Garden to Maine, right? So you have
Oh yeah.
another opportunity for fans that maybe can't travel to the Garden. They have an opportunity to kind of experience that Celtics atmosphere and energy. But it doesn't match the Garden, like no matter how hard you want to replicate it, it doesn't match the Garden. So what is your favorite parts about the Garden? Like what are like whether it's, what are your favorite parts of the Garden? I'm curious.
I think the best part of the Garden is it doesn't really matter where you sit. You're going to be able to see the game pretty clearly from any angle, which is, I mean, I'm not saying other arenas aren't like that, and I'm sure they all are, but the fact that the Garden, it's an older stadium compared to like the newer ones, like the Intuit Dome and stuff like that. But the fact that it still doesn't really matter, the price range of the people that are going, it's still going to be loud. When the Celtics are going on like, a 10-2 run, Jason Tatum hits a big three and the other team calls a timeout, like you're going to hear the Garden no matter where you are. So the fact that it can still get loud no matter what is probably the best thing. The fact that you can sit anywhere and still see the game. Definitely found a new appreciation for sitting up in the 300 levels during the playoffs this year. I was at game 2 of the Magic series, I think, and I don't think I was at the Knicks series. Oh wait, no, I was at game 1 of the Knicks series. But either way, sitting up in the 300s and just the passion that the fans have up there and everybody going crazy. It's you don't get that in many other stadiums, and the TD Garden just kind of enhances that atmosphere.
Love it.
100%. And Ian, we already talked about the great moments in Celtics history. However, we've been through some not so great moments in Celtics history. You mentioned that 2021 season. My question to you, however, is this past season, 24-25. Was it a failure or was it not a failure? From my perspective so far, I'm just going to throw it out there. I'll just say it point blank. I think it's a failure. I thought it was a complete failure. I'll explain it on this one or another pod, whatever it has to be. But from your perspective, Ian, was this past season a failure for the Boston Celtics?
Obviously, context aside, the easiest answer is yes, this season was a failure. This team was brought back together. They signed everyone back because the main goal was to repeat. And considering the NBA Finals we have now, watching the Pacers Thunder series, it kind of feels like they Celtics should have been there. Obviously, context aside, Jason Tatum, tore his Achilles. Jaylen Brown was playing on torn meniscus. Porzingis, had his illness. Obviously, there's context to it, but in the grand scheme of things, just looking at it generally, yes, this season was a failure because the ultimate goal was to repeat as champions, and they didn't even make it out of the second round. Yeah, it sucks. Obviously, you don't want to say that because the reason as to why they didn't make it out of the second round. But the fact that you blow 2 20-point leads at home against the Knicks, and even in the Magic series, they didn't look, incredible or anything. Drew Holiday was dealing with injuries in that series as well, so it's like, sorry. So it's like, obviously the context of everything, it sucks that the way that they went out, but yeah, I think the season was a failure for sure.
And throughout the season, at what point in the season did you start to suspect maybe this wasn't the year for the Celtics? Because although the Celtics fell apart in that Knicks series, I mean, if you think about it, if they won one of those first 2 home games, the series
They probably win the series, yeah.
Right. The series looks completely different if they just win one of those games where they're up 20 points in the third quarter. But even after, or rather before that series, it felt like the Celtics throughout the season, even going into the playoffs and the Magic series, just wasn't really clicking the entire season. At a certain point in time, if you look at the whole body of work, we never really, I mean, yes, at the end of the season, there was the 14 there was a 14-2 run to end the season over the last 16 games. I believe the team was, I mean, they were way above 500 before that mark by the All-Star break, but it just never felt like it was completely consistent. So just looking at the entirety of last season, what were your points in the season where you looked at the team and went, is this really the team to compete
Yeah,
and go back to back?
definitely. I think it was January where they had that rough month where they were like just kind of barely over 500. It felt like they were losing a lot of games that they maybe shouldn't have. It was kind of giving me flashbacks to the 2023 team a little bit. Uh, I'm trying to think of like legitimate examples. Probably like that Rockets game early in the year at TD Garden. I don't know if you remember that one where it was like they had a huge lead, couldn't hold on to it. Eamon Thompson had like the game of his life, and the Celtics end up losing. There were a ton of games similar to that this season, and it kind of gave me the 2023 Celtics vibes where it was like, yeah, we obviously know how good this team is, but another kind of rough January-ish All-Star break, kind of going into the All-Star break, a little bit out of it was like, you know, is this team going to consistently, they obviously weren't going to be as dominant as they were last year, but it definitely didn't feel the same anytime they had like a huge lead. You always kind of had that feeling in the back of your mind where it was like, yeah, this team might give it up. And there were times even outside of the playoffs that they gave it up. But I think the real kind of thing for me was the Magic series. Uh, I don't know why. I game game one didn't feel amazing. Game two didn't feel amazing, even with Tatum being out. Obviously, the loss in game three wasn't great. Um, and even when Tatum came back for those games, it was like, yeah, it kind of feels like Jason Tatum doing everything. Uh, Everybody couldn't shoot to save their lives, it felt like. Obviously, we saw that and it kind of felt like they were getting away with it because the Magic were so terrible when it came to 3-point shooting. But yeah, there were just like a bunch of signs that felt like every blown 20-point lead during games, and even if they'd win, there was just little things chipping away as time went on, where it was like, yeah, maybe this team's not exactly the same. Plus, there was always somebody on the injured list, like whether it was Brown or Holiday or Porzingis or somebody always found a way to be on the injured list, and they never felt like a consistent unit like they were in 2024.
And what are your projections going ahead into the future for the Celtics in the 2025 offseason and beyond? Because we are seeing a lot of reports and rumors out there about, will KP be on the move? Will Giroux be on the move? Sam Hauser, those are the main three names. Could Derek White be on the move? Maybe even Jaylen Brown. A lot of names out there now, considering Jason Tatum presumably will not play all of next season. I know a lot of people floating it out there that he might come back, but I would doubt it. However, going ahead into the future for the Celtics, what do you project is the outlook for this summer from your perspective, Ian?
Yeah, from my perspective, I think it's pretty much set in stone. They're going to trade Drew Holiday, they're going to trade Kristaps Porzingis, and they're going to trade Sam Hauser. Those are kind of the three guys that I think out of anybody that's going to get traded this offseason, it's going to be them. Just salary reasons and maybe play reasons, although it might not be popular. And although you don't want to get rid of a guy like Drew Holiday, who's pretty integral to your defense, I mean, it's kind of feeling like, why wouldn't you at this point if you're trying to shed salary? And maybe even Derek White is now on the table. If you just saw the Desmond Bain trade, like 5 first-round picks for Desmond Bain, what can you get for a guy like Derek White? I don't think they're going to go too far, though. I do think Brad Stevens is going to do the best he can to still build a somewhat competitive team. The Eastern Conference is not great this season. Even without Jason Tatum, the Celtics are still maybe a top 4 team in the East, and that's kind of how bad the Eastern Conference is. So, I mean, it feels like the Celtics are still going to be competitive. They're still going to try to they're still going to try to be a competitive team. But if you see like say Jaylen Brown gets another injury and he's out for longer than expected, or, maybe Derek White gets injured and he's out longer than expected. One of those things where it's like the main guys, maybe I'm not saying they tank or anything, but maybe they try to get a play-in spot. And maybe they lose in the play-in and try to get the lottery look for AJ DeBanson or something like that. I think that's worst case scenario, obviously, but I think they're going to be maybe a 4 to 6 seed in the East this year. Maybe they win a first round playoff series against a team like the Pistons or something, and maybe they lose in the first round and Jason Tatum is back by then. That's the best case scenario, but obviously I'm not going to say this team is going to run it back and win a championship next year. But, you never know. You never know what can happen. Maybe Jason Tatum has the most miraculous comeback from a torn meniscus we've ever seen, and the Celtics are just as good as they always were.
And you mentioned that Desmond Bane trade. Let's cover this right now. Ian, what are your thoughts on this? Shams Charania reporting, breaking, the Memphis Grizzlies are trading Desmond Bane to the Orlando Magic for Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Cole Anthony, 4 unprotected first-round picks, and 1 first-round pick swap, sources tell ESPN. So this report coming out from Shams Charania earlier in the day, and Ian, you already mentioned it, but what are your initial thoughts on that trade? Because that's the first big trade of the 2025 summer.
I'll give it to the Magic. They see that the East is wide open right now with Tatum being out. And they're making a deal that will drastically improve their team. They needed 3-point shooting more than anybody. And Desmond Bane is probably one of the best, 3-point shooting, off the dribble kind of players in the NBA right now, especially with the Memphis offense. And Memphis didn't really have a whole lot of I wouldn't say they don't have a lot of spacing, but around John Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr., Desmond Bane at times was the number one option because everybody was out. And he played some incredible basketball when he was there. I think he'll fit great alongside Franz Wagner and Paolo Banchero. However, I'm still a little skeptical because I feel like the Magic kind of blew their load a little too fast. I still think they need a point guard. Jalen Suggs is great, but he's not always available. They just traded Cole Anthony. Anthony Black hasn't really developed into anything legitimate yet. It's great that the Magic are making this move, but I don't really know if it's going to do much in the long run. For the Grizzlies case, I think that's the best case scenario they could have even had. I didn't even know Desmond Bane was on the table, but the fact that you were able to get 5 first-round picks for him, and especially the pick swaps and the later first-round picks, you still have John Morant, you still have Jaren Jackson Jr., and the team is just full of depth. They have so many young guys that would be legitimate rotation players on any other team that were getting DNPs this year. So this opens up the door for guys like Gigi Jackson or Scottie Pippen Jr. to get more minutes for the Grizzlies. And I think that's what they want. And they might be retooling a little bit, but this could be a pretty big trade for them in the years to come if it doesn't really work out in Orlando.
Yeah, I have to say really quick, considering the first question that Seamus said, I feel like really where it started to go downhill was when we had our podcast. We talked about that potential panic button, and pushing that, and were we scared right then? And I think one thing that I was stressing all season on the program was the Celtics blowing leads and not keeping their foot on the gas pedal and not staying consistent. However, though, what move do you want to see from the Boston Celtics this offseason? And I'm trying to pull up a picture really quick about Desmond Bane, but he was drafted by the Boston Celtics. So just considering that, it's crazy because it shows what we could have had with Desmond Bane, but it's one of those random ones where you trade him away and he becomes a star. So, but
if you have Desmond Bane, you do not have Derek White, or you might like that. I'm just pointing this out. In 2022, if you have Desmond Bane on the roster, you never know. He may have been shipped away in that Brogdon deal. He may have been shipped away in that Derek White deal. So even if you traded or you didn't trade away Desmond Bane, you might have traded him away later.
What was that, Ian?
I was going to say you could have made the case that Smart would have been traded if Desmond Bane was still on the team. So, Smart would have been traded 2022 because, although Smart was still the depoy that year, I don't know. You never know.
No, I always think how different NBA history could be because if I'm not mistaken, one of these was a for sure. I'm for sure on it. The other one, I'm not so sure. But the Celtics, they lost out on Tyler Hero and Tyrese Halliburton on 2 coin flips.
Yes. Yeah, I remember that.
That happened. That happened. Both drafts. If the Celtics win the 12, 13, 14 coin flip in both 2020 and what was it? But Tyrese
2019.
Halliburton and Hero. So yeah, 2019 and 2020. Both of those guys become Celtics. They don't. Maybe the Celtics also just saying, yep, here it is, Desmond Bain. Throw
Sorry,
that back up, Griffin. There you go.
welcome
A
to
Celtic for 2 seconds on 20. This was the weird. Let's
He
point this
was
out for the viewership too.
he was already not
This was the draft night in which was completely virtual due to COVID. This was November of 2020. So, and this too, this was the first draft ever held in the month of November in the NBA. I mean, at
Yeah.
least, I mean, well, unless we had a draft back in the 40s held in November, I'm not really sure about that. At least the modern era, as we know it. Not held in June, held in November that year, virtually, that draft. And Desmond Bain, a Celtic for 30 seconds.
Yeah.
I used to, I really, I used to leave, I used to lose sleep over that one. I'll say it right now. I used to, because Pritchard, for even as good as Pritchard is, like, he's not Desmond Bain. But you look at their contracts nowadays. Pritchard, 6th man of the year. Bain making $44 million 5 years from now, 4 years from now. I feel like the Celtics, they definitely got some value out of that draft regardless.
Yeah.
Sure.
No, but my question for you, Ian, is if you had to, obviously, we don't know what's in the air for the Boston Celtics. Like we've said on here too, on Celtics Nation Rise, is very well, we could go back next year and still have the same roster and maybe a little changes. But ideally, if you had to see like the mock trades and everything, who are your like top 3 pieces that you could see the Boston Celtics obtaining this offseason?
No, just thinking about trades and like I've written some trade proposals for like different players this season. One of the trades that I think is probably the best bet for the Celtics, at least logistically, in my opinion, would probably be Drew Holiday for DeMar DeRozan in Sacramento. Now, obviously, it's not like a flashy move or anything. It's definitely not a move that a whole lot of people will be very excited about. But I mean, if you think about the logistics, the Celtics will save, I think it's $7 million if they trade Drew Holiday for DeMar DeRozan. Uh, DeRozan's on the last year of his contract. He'll be a wing position, alongside Jaylen Brown. Obviously, I don't think he's not gonna have like this career renaissance or anything. I don't think, but I don't know. I mean, I like the idea of DeMar DeRozan on the Celtics for one season and then leaving in free agency. And Drew Holiday goes to a team on the Kings who want a point guard, and that's something that I feel like would be okay. I guess I wouldn't be mad at that too badly. Obviously, there's a bunch of different Porzingis trades you can make. You could do I think it's like a sign and trade with the Warriors for Jonathan Kuminga or something like that. I can't remember exactly what it was. And then I was kind of thinking of different. Obviously, I don't think it's ever going to happen, but a Jaylen Brown trade. You could trade Jaylen Brown to the San Antonio Spurs, maybe get the number 2 overall pick, maybe get a guy like Stephon Castle.
We talked about that last time. Yeah,
that would be something I'd be very interested in. I don't think they're going to do that though. I think they're going to hang on to him. And there's a trade for Derek White that you could do. I was thinking about today, you could do another Warriors trade. You could do Moses Moody and Buddy Hield. You can get like 3 first-round picks in return if you really wanted to. They saved $7.3 million in that trade. But there's a bunch of different things that the Celtics have a chance to do. However, I think they're probably not going to do anything too crazy. They're going to move Holiday, and I think they're going to get a better return than just DeMar DeRozan. But if it was anything, I think that's probably the move that I wouldn't mind seeing, and it might be okay. I think it'll be okay. I don't hate DeMar DeRozan on the Celtics.
Yeah, it's there's a
Celtic killer
lot.
DeMar DeRozan on the Celtics.
Hey, Brad Stevens loves bringing in players that have killed the Celtics.
I mean, imagine showing us in 2017 a picture of DeMar DeRozan in a Celtics jersey in 2025. Just, I mean, it wouldn't be explainable. It simply would not be explainable. And you'd go and people and
And
we
no Jason Tatum alongside of just Jalen. People would have thought we traded DeMar DeRozan for Jason Tatum.
right, and you tell people too. Oh, we won a championship in that time. By the way, it's like, oh, we have DeMar DeRozan, no Tatum, but hey, we got a chip. But I want to talk about somebody who was very vital in winning that chip for the Boston Celtics last year in 2024, Kristaps Porzingis, because he's going to be a name on the trade market this summer. There are conflicting opinions out there on whether the Celtics should actually trade Porzingis or not. And there's conflicting opinions on whether or not he's actually worth anything out there on the trade market. But from you, Ian, what do you think Kristaps is actually worth on the trade market? Today, I thought what was interesting about the Desmond Bane trade is Brian Windhorst, he went on ESPN and he explained how all of the picks traded for Bane, right? Initially, it looks like, whoa, Desmond Bane, he nets 5 first-round picks. That's a great haul of picks right there. But he also said, well, part of those picks, Brian Windhorst reports, part of those picks were for paying off Kentavious Caldwell-Pope's contract. They were basically shipping away picks, the magic word, to ship away KCP's contract. And looking at KCP, he's 31 years old. 2 seasons ago, was very vital in the Nuggets' run to the championship in 2023. However, now, coming off an awful season, one of his worst seasons of his entire career with Orlando, he all of a sudden becomes a contract that Orlando needs to pay to get off after they just paid him last summer pretty good money to be in Orlando. But Porzingis, I look at him and I now go, well, considering the Magic had to pay to get off of Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, is there a chance the Celtics have to pay to get off of Kristaps Porzingis? Because Kristaps Porzingis in that Knicks series, I mean, looking at his playoff resume in general with the Celtics, even stretching back to 2024, considering his availability issues, Kristaps Porzingis seems like he's becoming a player at $30.7 million that teams aren't necessarily vying to give up a bunch of assets for, but rather they want assets in return to take on his contract. What does that look like from your perspective, Ian? What do you think Kristaps Porzingis' value is on the market this summer?
Not great. I don't think he has very much value, if I'm being honest. Windhorst, I think, yeah, it was Windhorst that reported that he doesn't really have a whole lot out there right now. And it doesn't really surprise me. He's an injury. He's always been injury prone his entire career. And the fact that even when he won a championship, he was still not healthy. I really don't see a team, going out there and be like, yeah, let's give the Celtics, a bunch of first round picks for him. I think they're definitely going to have to attach at least one first round pick, no matter where they end up trading him. And I did find that Warriors trade I was talking about earlier about Porzingis. It was Moses Moody, Buddy Hield, and one of Trace Jackson Davis or Guy Santos with a draft pick. That's what I was thinking of with Porzingis. And the Warriors have shown interest in the past in Porzingis. They even when the Celtics traded for him, they were thinking about getting him. So I don't know. Maybe you go along that route. I can't really think. I'm trying to think of another team that needs a sharpshooting big at this time. Maybe call the Bulls and do a swap for Vucevic if that's possible. I haven't really thought about the logistics of that, but if it's an idea, maybe you do something like that where you trade one bad salary for another bad salary, and you kind of just are like, hey, it evens out, right? So there's a bunch of different things to think about when it comes to actually moving Porzingis because there's a bunch of teams that do need big men depth. However, he's a depreciating value, and you're most likely going to have to attach at least one first round pick alongside him, no matter who you trade him for.
Well, does that get into an area of maybe the Celtics, maybe it's not worth trading Kristaps Porzingis? Like, do you see a scenario that plays out this summer where the Celtics look at the market for Porzingis and go, why don't we just hold on to Porzingis? Maybe we can flip him for something at the deadline for cost-cutting purposes. And furthermore, I look at it and go, well, Porzingis on the horizon, he's an expiring. Next season, potentially you get him on a better team-friendly deal that's not $30 million. Maybe it comes in at 20 million. Maybe it comes in at 15. Who knows how low it can go depending on what his production is. Could go higher considering his production next season. You never know. But do you see a scenario potentially playing out this summer where the Celtics look at his market and go, it just isn't worth trading Kristaps Porzingis if we're giving up assets with him? Because you look at the rotation, they're going to need him next season. Right now, you have 39-year-old Al Horford behind him. Luke Cornett's a free agent, and Al Horford is as well. They could both walk. And then what? Your big man is Kata? So I is there a scenario in your mind that plays out that maybe the Celtics just look at the market and go, well, we're not moving Porzingis. We actually need him in our rotation.
It's definitely a thought that's crossed my mind because, like we just said, he's not going to have the biggest market out there. I'm not going to lie to you. I personally think there's not really a chance he's on this team next season, just because I feel like the volatility of kind of everything that transpired with the whole illness thing and the fact that he's going to play like Eurobasket after this now and everything, where it's like, kind of don't see a world where he's on the Celtics next year. However, it also wouldn't surprise me if Brad Stevens is like, hey, we can't get anything for you, so you're just going to kind of have to stay here. I don't know. It's definitely an interesting thought because, it's kind of tough thought, but it wouldn't surprise me if he's still here next year. Although obviously he's a fan favorite to some. He's, everybody loves him when he walks out to the crowd. But I don't know. I still don't think there's really a way he's on the team next year. I think they're definitely going to try their best to get rid of him, or kind of like what you said, Seamus, about trading at the deadline. That might be a more realistic chance, especially, if a team is trying to get into the race and is going to be desperate. Porzingis, I hate to say this, but he does kind of play his best when nobody's watching him and there's no expectations. You saw that season with the Wizards before the Celtics traded for him. It was the first healthy year of his career, and this is also kind of going to be a big season for him. And if there's any time for him to play at his best, it's going to be this season. So that's definitely a better option. Maybe he's training at the deadline, but I still think that he's gone this offseason.
Well, would you rather attach picks to his contract this offseason or let him walk in free agency after another year of service? I feel like people underrate years of service with teams because even with Desmond Bane, just going back on that trade for a second, he nets 5 first-round picks for the Grizzlies. Well, 4 unprotected picks and a pick swap. But he also, the value that he emits to the Grizzlies, right? It's going to be into the future, but it was also the past. He just gave the Grizzlies 5 years of service. That number 30 pick in 2020 became 5 years of service, along with essentially 5 future first-round picks for the Grizzlies. Do the Celtics look at would you rather attach picks this offseason to Porzingis or actually allow that year of service to play out and then let him walk in free agency? What would be the more ideal move from your? And this is kind of a question where I go, well, it depends who's writing the checks, right?
Obviously,
it depends who's writing the checks.
I just feel like they want to do their best to shed as much salary as possible. I don't think Bill Chisholm is going to go to Brad Stevens and be like, hey, this is exactly what you need to do. You need to trade Kristaps Porzingis. I don't want to pay his contract. I don't think he's going to do that. I think he's going to trust Brad Stevens and let him do what he thinks is right. However, Brad Stevens also hasn't been afraid to attach a first-round pick to get rid of a guy. He traded Kemba Walker and a first-round pick to get back Al Horford. Kind of something along the lines of that. So I don't think Brad Stevens is any stranger to wanting to get rid of a guy like that and doing that kind of scenario. But obviously, when it comes to thinking about it rationally, it makes more sense to just let him walk in free agency. But if you do find an offer that you really like, I don't think Stevens is going to have a problem trading a first-round pick alongside him. Obviously, it's smarter to just let him walk in free agency and keep the pick, but I don't know. I kind of feel like Brad Stevens isn't afraid to kind of do what he has to do to get rid of the guy.
Yeah, no, 100%. Obviously, I think it's still up in the air what the Celtics are going to completely do this offseason. But, Andrew, do you have any more questions before we dive more into the Celtics fandom? Oh, I think you're muted, Andrew.
I'm all set. I'm all good.
So my question is, obviously we've talked a lot about the Celtics season and what happened, and usually we'll ask this one when it comes closer to the end, but I have more questions about your Celtics fandom as well. But my question for you is, like, we've said this with the last 3 fan series episodes too. A lot of Celtics fans are down about, what happened last season, with the Tatum injury and what happened. What's your advice or like kind of pep talk to Celtics fans who are down and to stay with the team and stay engaged, because a lot of Celtics fans are hurt and upset and, they're like, all right, well, we might be out for a little bit now. What's your advice to pick Celtics fans back up?
The 2024 finals, every game is on YouTube. So do a whole lot of watching of that. But seriously, obviously, Brad Stevens is one of the best GMs in the NBA, and he's not just going to flat out like tank a season away.
Right.
No matter what, the Celtics are going to do their best to try to be a competitive ball club next year. And whether Jason Tatum comes back or not, they're going to make the playoffs. They're going to probably win a first-round series. So, like, it's not like it's going to be a whole lot different. You have guys like Jordan Walsh, Baylor Shireman, Peyton Pritchard has another year. Guys that are going to have more opportunities that might develop into something, hopefully. That's obviously what the Celtics are trying to do. It could be exciting to see who they bring in a trade. Obviously, trades are the most exciting part of the offseason. There's a lot. The Celtics are always going to be in the news thinking about different options, so you're going to have that. I don't really think there's going to be a boring time during this entire offseason for Boston or even during the season. I think it's going to be one of those years. I'm trying to think of it. It probably might be a year like the 2021 year, but that's okay. You're going to see a lot of guys who, wouldn't get the same amount of playing time if Tatum was there, get more opportunities. And I think that's going to be the best thing for their development and the team moving forward as a whole. So obviously it's going to suck not watching Jason Tatum because he's definitely, in my opinion, the most, the best part about watching Celtics basketball. But you're going to see guys, maybe Derek White has an all-star season next year. Maybe Peyton Pritchard is in a starting role and he's, improved even more than he did last year. There's a whole lot of different opportunities that could happen. And, there's always the exciting part of the unknown, whether or not, they're going to be this, front running amazing team next year. Obviously it might not be the case, but it's still going to be fun. It's still going to be Celtics basketball and it should still be a fun time, hopefully.
Oh yeah, definitely. Andrew, what about you?
I think, I'm with you. I think there's a lot of, hope for the Celtics. It's not, like you said, we won a championship in 2024. Like there has to be some setbacks. There has to be you got to move a couple steps back before you kind of, move forward. So like, I agree with you. I think that Celtics fans need to be, let's just be grateful for what we have and what we're looking forward to in the future. And so I'm curious, and I think we talked about it a little. Do you see anything where like it really is like a complete bridge year next year? Like, do you see that happening? Because I think that's been a discussion of like a topic of discussion recently, especially on this podcast. Like, is there a chance where we're completely setting up our future for Tatum, or do you think there is still like that competitive push for him? Like you kind of already touched upon it, but I just like kind of want to fine tune it on that.
Yeah, kind of like what I said. Brad Stevens in his end of season press conference said that he's going to build a competitive team next year. Like I'm not saying he doesn't believe in tanking, but he's definitely not going to flat out say, hey, let's just tank the season for AJ DeBanza. Maybe if it ends up like the Memphis Grizzlies a few years ago where everybody gets injured and you don't really have much of a choice but to kind of tank and just accept the fact that it's going to happen. But I think no matter what, the Celtics are definitely going to try to compete for a champion. They're going to try to compete for a championship every year. But next year, they're definitely not going to just go into the season kind of just laying down and, letting themselves lose every game. They're definitely going to try to compete. There's too many players on this team that are too competitive to want to
Right.
lose every game
Exactly.
anyway. You're not going to see Peyton Pritchard out there trying to tank a season away. If he's the number one option, Peyton Pritchard's going to try his best to average 30 a game. So that's just kind of the way this team is built. That's kind of their DNA. And I just don't see a world where they're intentionally going to try to tank. If it plays out that way because of injury, then, it happens. But they're definitely going to try their best to compete and make another long playoff run next year, no matter if Tatum comes back or not.
Yeah, and then you mentioned, Peyton Pritchard being that competitive, having that competitive edge that he has, and all these guys. And you also said we could have a developmental period where like we have these guys kind of find their roles and kind of grow in their play styles and find a fit into the Celtics rotation. I'm fairly high on Shireman. I thought I liked a lot of what he kind of displayed this season. Like, what do you see for Shireman coming through? Because obviously Hauser, there's potential, like you said, that we're going to move him. Like, do you see Shireman fitting in that role, or do you see him even kind of taking a leap over Hauser in that in his play?
Yeah, so just kind of thinking about it, Shireman and Hauser, although they kind of have the same skill set, they're not really the same player. You know
Right.
what I mean? Like Hauser is one of the few players in the league that no matter where he is on the court, if he gets the ball at the 3-point line, he's going to chuck it up as fast as he can, and most of the time, as we've seen, it goes in. He's a career 40% shooter ever since he was like a junior in high school. So Sam Hauser is going to be an automatic shooter no matter what. Shireman is a little different. His shot's not as smooth as Hauser's. His left-handed shot kind of takes a little longer to get off than Hauser's, but Shireman can do things that Hauser really can't do. I think Shireman has a little more upside on the defensive end. He's a little more thicker. He's a little more able to move his feet. He's able to pass the ball, which is something that nobody really expected. I remember watching his highlights at Creighton, and he had a lot of great passes, but the fact that that's been able to translate to the NBA is pretty good. I'm not going to say he's going to be this legit rotation guy or anything, but I definitely think he has a chance to improve next year. And with the minutes that Tatum is kind of, someone's going to have to fill the Tatum minutes. And if Shireman's able to step in, perform, hit his shots, be a 3-and-D guy that the Celtics need, he's going to find himself in the rotation more often than not. And whether they trade Hauser or not is going to be interesting. If they trade Hauser, he's definitely going to find more rotation minutes. But if Hauser's still on the team, I still think there's going to be a world where you can play both of them at the same time. And both of them are going to have different skill sets that are both going to translate positively to a Celtics game.
For sure.
Yeah, I have to say, I will say this. I think the most thing that we could look on, though, for next year is see a lot of development with players like JD Davison, Baylor Shireman. I really do think you're going to see a lot more minutes for them, especially, JD. A lot of people don't like the talk with JD Davison, but he did sign that 2-year deal with the Boston Celtics, so it's undeniable that he's going to play with the Celtics next year, signing that contract. And Baylor, Ian, you're smiling a little bit. Do you have something with JD Davison? Because I know some people on the program don't like him. What are your thoughts on JD Davison? But then I'll get into Baylor Shireman after for a second.
I'm going to say I don't like him. I just don't think he's going to be a rotation player for the Celtics.
I don't think so either. You think he'll get kind of a role like for me personally, I think he'll get more of a Tillman role. I think it's gonna be
he's definitely going to play more. I don't think he's going to be, he's not going to be in the G League next year. He's like the main Celtics leader and everything because he was in the G League for like 3 years. So I don't think he's going to be in Maine next year at all, but I still don't think he's going to be anything. I'm not going to say he's not going to be anything, but he hasn't shown me anything personally.
Not in the NBA.
not in the NBA to think he's going to be a rotation player. Maybe if he's not on the Celtics, maybe he goes to a different team and he becomes that guy. But on the Celtics, I don't think he really is going to be anything.
But I also think JD Davidson is one of those guys where, he can put the ball in the hoop. He can create for himself, but he's a high volume guy. Like, he needs the ball in his hands a lot. I mean, when I went to that one main Celtics game, I mean, majority of the game he had that ball in his hands and he was trying to, kind of attack, and there was less. I just think his IQ is not as high. I mean, creativity wise, just moving the ball, like, the Celtics kind of need that, right? Like, we kind of need someone that kind of takes that pressure off from, say, Tatum, say Brown, and kind of can facilitate and get easier looks. Because I think this season we saw that. Like, I thought later in these playoffs, like, we were really working hard for our shots and our offense looked stagnant. I thought we really did not move the ball well enough, and we needed easier looks. And so a guy like JD Davidson, who needs the ball in his hands a lot, and like, it feels like that's really more Tatum and Brown's role. But I do see JD Davidson going to like a team that's not necessarily contender, and again, I could see him on the Rockets or something. I mean, like, those are the guys they kind of have, or like a Kevin Porter Jr. who just can kind of put the ball in the hoop. But is he a winner? Is he that guy that brings your team to that next level? I don't necessarily see it.
He would be perfect on the Jazz.
Yeah,
or
he's
the Hornets.
Perfect on the Jazz.
Or the Hornets. But I have to say this, and that's why I think Baylor Shireman is so impressive. In the time I saw him in Maine, they started off, and I was upset about this, and this might just be because he was like new to the team, but they started him on the bench, and I think he kind of got that understanding. All right, this is where I'm going to start off in the role with the Celtics, and I'm going to have to be, a pass first player rather than a score first, like JD Davison. JD Davison, he has the ball in his hands every time, and he's controlling the offense. Baylor Shireman, from what I've seen from him in the G League, has been an incredible player, and he showed flashes of, a valuable asset to a Celtics team. I've seen very, very good stuff in the G League from Baylor Shireman. So, obviously the G League is a lot different than the NBA, but I'm excited to see Baylor Shireman's development in the NBA next year. But my question for you too, and we asked this for Brandon Capella last time too, what is your top 5 all-time Celtics starting 5? And he went for more of a route of the 2000s, and you could give it like your favorite players or who you think is the top starting 5. But what,
or you could just be like, who's going 82-0? You know what I mean? Like, anything.
Either. How about we give? All right, first I'm gonna ask you your 82-0 starting 5, like your all-time, and then your top, like your starting 5 favorite players. So we'll start off with the 82-0.
I guess all time. I guess probably have to do. I don't know. Rondo at point guard, probably. Shooting guard, I guess I'd go Havlicek, and then you'd have Bird, Tatum, Russell. That'd probably be 82-0 if you're just going Celtics players. My top 5 personally, like in a lineup that was my favorite players, probably point guard would be Isaiah Thomas. Shooting guard would be Jaylen Brown. Small forward would probably be Paul Pierce. Power forward would be Jason Tatum, and the center would be Kevin Garnett. That would be my fan favorite one, and then the 82-0 one was does that one.
I like that.
I can't believe you don't have Josh Richardson in there. Dennis
Six
Schroeder,
man of the year,
Miles,
Josh Richardson for sure.
Joe Johnson,
Al-Farouq Aminu. I know he's in your fan favorite starting 5. He was technically a Celtic.
Starting forward over Tatum.
I was a big Jeff Green guy. I love Jeff Green when he was on
Marcus
Jeff
Morris.
Green guy.
Yeah.
What about Jonas Jerebko?
Definitely got to get an Abdel Nader guy in there. Definitely.
Who did we trade him for? Rodney Purvis.
Y'all are forgetting
Jake
Crowder.
Rodney Purvis.
Celtics side.
Jeez.
Or Tristan Thompson.
Will Pressey just got assigned.
I know.
Will Pressey did for the G League for the main Celtics. So.
Yeah.
Vitor Favarani.
Jameer Nelson 5 games.
Yeah.
Tayshaun Prince. I mean, there's a lot of options.
There's
But
nothing better.
Jordan Mickey,
Yeah, it's a great
Demetrius
game.
Jackson,
oh Lord,
Recommend
Kareem
this.
Allen,
I'm sure you
Amari Bird.
Yeah, I'm sure everyone has done this before, but
you could
go
definitely
to the
just
beach with
rattle
your
off
boys,
a ton of
Walt
light it on
Lemon
fire
Jr.
and just try to have fun playing that game. It's a fun game. It's a fun game.
Ian, I have one
Bruno
last.
Fernando. Okay, I'm done.
I
love
have
Bruno
one
Fernando.
last question before we close it off. So we are actually talking about a funny thing. I have a Tristan Thompson Celtics jersey. Don't know why. What's your most coolest like vintage Celtics gear, or do you have a random Celtics player's jersey too, like I do?
Greg Stiesma. No.
Random Celtics jersey. I'm trying to think. I guess in the future this might be the random Celtics jersey, but I don't think it necessarily is now. I have a legitimate Grant Williams like Vistaprint game jersey. I loved Grant Williams. Seamus knows. Seamus remembers back in the. You remember back when we used to do the post game shows? We used to talk about Grant Williams all the time.
I remember from your
I
TikToks, you
almost
love
I
Grant.
almost want Grant back for the vibes, just the vibes.
Exactly.
Right, yeah, he
I
did
don't.
bring good
He's
vibes.
kind of a goofball,
And,
but there was promise. There was
And then
real
I met-
promise.
I met Grant Williams one time. It was at a I Love Boston Sports signing, and I think I went like straight from work, and I went with my friend who I was working with, and he almost spelt my name wrong. He almost wrote IAM instead of
Ian.
IAN. Yeah, so that one's definitely top tier. Trying to think of like any other random stuff. I remember I met Xavier Tillman's family one time at a Celtics game. It was like the first game. It was like the first game he got traded, and I was like at the game, and they were just like chilling in the pro shop, and like we just kind of struck up a conversation, and didn't even notice they had like the family passes on, and like I'm trying to think. I don't think I have too much other random Celtic stuff off the
No
top of
me
my head.
Fiondu Cabangeli memories.
I
Memorabilia
loved.
items.
Don't even get me started on Mefendo Kabengele. I was a huge fan of him.
I know.
Dude, I'm
Just
trying to
thinking
look
about it.
around. Oh yeah, I have the last bobblehead TD Garden ever gave out.
What was
Yeah, like
what was that?
Blake Griffin stuff. Blake Griffin.
I do have Blake Griffin.
That's Justin for sure.
I have Blake Griffin.
But yeah, I have the last
I
bobblehead.
was gonna mention Justin as this is a perfect question for Justin because he has a
Yeah.
bunch of.
Oh, yeah, this is the last bobblehead TD Garden ever gave out. It was a Jason
That's sick.
Tatum bobblehead. It was in the 2020 season.
Wait,
Yeah,
so they haven't
2019-20
given out a
season.
bobblehead since then?
Nope, this was a part of
Why
it.
not?
It was a collectible bobblehead series. It came with Kemba Walker, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Gordon Hayward, and Marcus Smart.
Wow.
The
So-
old starting five.
Man, Gordon.
I-
That just
But yeah, so this is the last. It was a game they played against the Oklahoma City Thunder. Back when Chris Paul was on the Oklahoma City Thunder. Chris Paul ripped Kemba Walker to end the game, and the Celtics lost. But yeah, this is the last time TD Garden ever gave out a bobblehead. I don't know why they stopped doing it, but it's kind of pretty sick.
You mentioned Chris Paul, man, and the way like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is playing right now. It's like it does speak on the importance of like having a veteran guy kind of like come into your team and fill that role. You know what I mean? And really
Oh
teach
yeah, for sure.
the ropes. So that's curious too. I think you guys talked about me on the other podcast. Like, we don't have to go in depth, but like, does a team like want Drew Holiday in that role? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
That's definitely
Celtics
going to be
want
Drew
Marcus
Holiday's
Smart.
calling card for sure.
Yeah.
Do the Celtics want Marcus Smart back in that role?
Yeah.
We have to ask ourselves that this summer.
Yeah.
I highly doubt it. But
This is what I got left for the Grant Williams pick, though. Batman. Every time I think of Grant Williams,
My
Batman.
goat, Grant Williams.
Well,
Grant
Ian,
Williams.
thank you again so much for joining. With that being said, that's going to do it for the podcast. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to comment down below if you want to be a part of this series. Hit us up on Instagram or comment down below and tell us why you are a Boston Celtics fan and want to join this series. And make sure to like and subscribe and turn on post notifications to be notified every time we upload, just so you guys are updated, because it's going to be crazy this off season, be doing the fan series at random times. But thank you guys again so much for watching. We will see you guys with the next one. Peace, guys.